LIV Golf just dropped two absolute bombshells that has shocked the golf world, announced two major signings for the 2026 season, and one of them is 22 years old with his entire career ahead of him. We're not talking about some aging veteran looking for one last payday or a middling player who couldn't hack it on the PGA Tour. But here's where it gets interesting. These are legitimate competitors in their prime, and the timing of these announcements is raising serious questions about what's really happening behind the scenes in professional golf. But here's the thing. While LIV was busy celebrating these additions, another young star just turned down a massive offer to join them, and his reasons for staying loyal to the PGA Tour might tell us more about LIV's future than any signing ever could. But listen to this. The two players who did sign are exactly the kind of talent that LIV desperately needs if they want to prove they're more than just a retirement home for washed-up major champions. This isn't about big names chasing easy money anymore. And it gets crazier when you realize that one of these guys won a major championship just 2 months ago and still chose LIV over every other option on the table. Thomas Detry and Elvis Smylie are officially joining LIV Golf for the 2026 season, and the PGA Tour just watched two of their rising stars walk out the door without so much as a goodbye. Detry, the Belgian who's been grinding on the PGA Tour since 2019, finally cracked the top 50 in the world rankings last year and immediately got poached. But that's not all. We're talking about a guy in his prime, 31 years old, with his best golf potentially still ahead of him. And then there's Smiley, the 22-year-old Australian who literally just won the Australian PGA Championship in November, beating some serious competition to claim his first major title down under. The kid's got momentum, he's got youth, and now he's got a LIV Golf contract. Here's the part people are missing. According to reports from Golf Digest, both players had been in negotiations for months, weighing guaranteed contracts worth millions against the uncertainty of tournament-based earnings on the PGA Tour. But that's not all. While LIV was finalizing these deals, they were simultaneously courting another young American star who ultimately said no. Akshay Bhatia, the 22-year-old phenom who turned pro at 17 and has already won on the PGA Tour, reportedly rejected a lucrative multi-year offer from LIV Golf in late 2025. And listen closely. According to sources cited by Golf Channel, the offer was substantial, likely in the range of $30 to $40 million guaranteed over multiple years. Bhatia apparently listened to the pitch, considered his options, and decided that staying on the PGA Tour was worth more than the financial security LIV was offering. The reason this is happening is simple once you hear the logic. Anonymous sources close to the player say it came down to major championship access, the prestige of PGA Tour victories, and a genuine belief that the traditional pathway would serve his career better long-term. The Bhatia rejection matters because it shows that LIV's pitch isn't universally appealing, even to young players who could use guaranteed money. Here's a guy who turned pro as a teenager, skipped college entirely, and has been grinding to establish himself in professional golf since 2018. He won the Barracuda Championship in 2023 and has shown flashes of brilliance in majors, but he's also dealt with injuries and inconsistency. But here's what makes this significant. Bhatia represents exactly the demographic LIV should be able to poach easily. Young, talented, not yet locked into massive endorsement deals, and likely carrying financial pressure after years of development costs. The fact that he still said no suggests one of two things, and it gets even more interesting when you consider the options. Either the offer wasn't as strong as reported, or there are serious concerns among young American players about what joining LIV would mean for their careers. According to Golf.com reporting, his team had multiple conversations with LIV representatives throughout 2025, exploring what a potential deal might look like. The exact details haven't been publicly disclosed, but people familiar with the talks suggested it included guaranteed money, team captain considerations once he established himself, and even some flexibility around scheduling to accommodate his preferred tournaments. But listen to this. Despite all that, Bhatia apparently walked away, telling his inner circle he wanted to prove himself on the PGA Tour first and revisit LIV later if the situation changed. And that's a massive gamble because one serious injury could derail his earning potential and make him wish he'd taken the guaranteed money when it was sitting right there. And here's the key difference. For Bhatia, an American who grew up watching the Masters and dreaming of major championships, the PGA Tour is the pinnacle in a way LIV can't replicate yet. For Smiley, an Australian who's geographically distant from the Tour's main markets anyway, and Detry, a European who has always competed across multiple tours, the calculus looks completely different. That's what makes this so telling. Let's dig deeper into what Detry brings to LIV and why his signing represents a strategic shift. This guy wasn't some marginal player desperate for relevance. He's competed in majors, represented Europe in team competitions, and built a legitimate career through the traditional pathway. His best finish on the PGA Tour was a second place at the 2023 Wyndham Championship, where he lost in a playoff despite shooting a final round 63. But here's what makes him valuable. He's consistently been one of the best ball strikers in pro golf, ranking inside the top 50 in strokes gained approach over the past 3 seasons. But here's what nobody's talking about. Detry had expressed frustration with the PGA Tour's complicated eligibility system and the constant pressure of maintaining your card every season. And that pressure is the whole point. One bad year, one injury, and suddenly you're back in qualifying school or begging for sponsor exemptions. LIV offered Detry guaranteed starts, guaranteed money, and the freedom to compete without the existential dread of losing your playing privileges. For a guy who's been grinding since his teens, that security apparently outweighed any sentimental attachment to the PGA Tour. But that's not all. According to unnamed sources in European golf media, Detry's contract likely runs into 8 figures over multiple years, more than he's earned in total PGA Tour prize money. The 54-hole, no-cut format with team elements reportedly appealed to him as well, since he's always thrived in team competitions for Belgium and Europe. And here's the sneaky part. The format plays into his strengths, because he tends to start tournaments strong, before fading slightly on Sundays, so fewer rounds means fewer chances for a late collapse. The Elvis Smylie signing might be even more significant long-term, and it directly contrasts with Akshay Bhatia's decision to stay put. Smiley won the Australian PGA Championship in November by shooting 14 under over 4 rounds at Royal Queensland, claiming his first major professional title with serious competition in the field. Now, if you're enjoying this breakdown of the chess match happening in professional golf right now, hit that like button, because we're just getting started with what these decisions actually mean for the sport's future. The contrast between Bhatia's rejection and Detry and Smiley's acceptance reveals a fundamental divide in how players view their careers and what they value most. Instead of taking the traditional route of grinding through PGA Tour qualifying and climbing the rankings like Bhatia, Smiley is skipping the whole system. It gets crazier when you consider the timing. He made this call within weeks of his biggest career victory when he had maximum leverage with every tour on the planet. According to Australian golf media, his team fielded offers from multiple organizations. But here's why LIV won. Guaranteed money and the promise of playing alongside established stars sealed it. But listen to this. Smiley's decision tells you something crucial about geography and career planning in modern golf. As an Australian, the traditional pathway often means relocating to the United States, constant travel between continents, and being away from family during the hardest developmental years. LIV's schedule reportedly includes more events in the Asia-Pacific region, shorter seasons overall, and financial security that lets him build a life in Australia instead of grinding for years in Florida or California. And that's the real difference. For Bhatia, an American who can drive to PGA Tour events from wherever he lives, those lifestyle trade-offs don't hit the same. The things that pull international players to LIV don't always resonate with young Americans raised on Masters dreams and Ryder Cup goals. The exact financial details of Smiley's contract haven't been made public, but Australian sports journalists reported that it includes performance bonuses, team captain considerations later, and even appearance fee guarantees for Asia-Pacific events. The kid's 22 and already has more financial security than most PGA Tour veterans who've been grinding for 15 years. Now compare that. Bhatia is the same age and chose to keep earning tournament by tournament with no guaranteed safety net beyond what he wins. It's two completely different philosophies about career management and risk tolerance. And here's the twist. Neither one is objectively wrong. The bigger picture is that LIV is systematically addressing its biggest criticism, the idea that it's just a retirement tour for aging stars. When LIV launched in 2022, the average age was over 35, with Phil Mickelson at 52 and Lee Westwood at 49 as major faces. Fast forward to 2026 and they're signing players like Smiley, who was barely out of college when LIV first teed off. Detry represents the middle ground, established enough to bring credibility, young enough to compete for another decade. The reason this matters is huge. LIV can start building multi-year storylines around player development instead of being a place where former major champions collect checks. Akshay Bhatia's rejection throws cold water on the narrative that every young player is willing to jump to LIV for the right price. According to people close to the situation, his decision came down to factors beyond money. First is the major championship question. LIV players still don't have guaranteed access to the Masters, US Open, Open Championship, and PGA, unless they qualify through other means. And that's a deal breaker for a player who believes he can win majors. Second is endorsements. Major sponsors are still hesitant to fully commit to LIV players, and Bhatia's team apparently calculated that staying on the PGA Tour could lead to bigger sponsorship money over time. But that's not all. There's also a generational divide among American players about what LIV represents, and whether it's a legit path or a risky bet on an uncertain future. Bhatia grew up idolizing Tiger Woods, watching FedEx Cup playoffs, and dreaming of the Ryder Cup. Those touchstones don't exist in LIV's world, and for some players that matters more than a guaranteed contract. And here's the part that keeps coming up quietly. Anonymous players have suggested there's concern LIV could fold in 5 years, leaving its players scrambling back to traditional tours with diminished status. Bhatia apparently shares that concern, or at least his team does. That kind of fear changes everything. Fear changes. The timing of these announcements matters more than people realize. LIV dropped the Detry and Smiley news in early January, right as the PGA Tour is kicking off its 2026 season and trying to generate buzz around its revamped schedule. It's a power move designed to dominate headlines and remind everyone LIV isn't going anywhere. But listen to this. Sources say LIV planned the timing for weeks to create maximum disruption during a period when golf media usually focuses on traditional tours. The strategy seems to be working. Social media exploded, journalists scrambled, and suddenly everyone is talking about LIV again. That's not an accident. Both Detry and Smiley made public statements, and the language is worth comparing to Bhatia's reported reasoning. Detry reportedly said he's excited for a new challenge and wants to be part of something different. That's diplomatic, but here's what it really sounds like. A guy frustrated with the status quo who sees LIV as a real alternative, not a cash grab. Smiley's comments were even more revealing. He talked about securing my family's future and competing without the constant pressure of keeping his card. And that's wild, because for a 22-year-old to be thinking about security before he's even established tells you exactly how LIV is pitching these deals. Bhatia's camp hasn't said much publicly, but sources suggest his thinking centers on legacy and long-term planning. Golf Channel reporting says Bhatia believes that if he becomes a consistent PGA Tour winner over the next 5 years, his total earning potential from prize money and endorsements will eclipse what LIV offered. But here's the risk. That assumes health, improvement, and results. It gets crazier when you realize he's betting his financial future on week-to-week performance with no safety net if things go wrong. The reaction has been predictably divided. PGA Tour loyalists praise Bhatia's loyalty and call Detry and Smiley sellouts. LIV supporters call them smart businessmen and view Bhatia as naive or proof the offer wasn't as big as reported. The reason this debate matters is because every decision sets precedent and influences the next wave of talent. When Norman recruited in 2021, signers were treated like pariahs. Now in 2026, it's framed like a standard transaction, and that shift tells you a lot. Here's where it gets really interesting. LIV now has enough young talent to start building multi-year storylines around player development, assuming guys like Smiley actually deliver. Imagine Smiley going head-to-head with Cameron Smith in individual and team moments, or Detry finally breaking through for his first LIV win after being the nearly man on the PGA Tour. These are the narratives traditional tours build entire campaigns around, and LIV is finally getting the roster to tell them. But listen to this. Younger players also mean longer career windows, so LIV can plan beyond the next couple seasons without relying on aging stars. Meanwhile, Bhatia staying gives the PGA Tour exactly the type of young American star they need to promote. The tour has watched marketable players age out or jump to LIV, and having a 22-year-old publicly choose the PGA Tour over guaranteed millions is marketing gold. And here's the sneaky advantage. Insiders believe the tour will feature Bhatia heavily, and he could even benefit from opportunities that come with being the loyalty example. The PGA Tour needs proof the system still works, and Bhatia could become Exhibit A. The elephant in the room is the supposed LIV-PGA merger. If a deal was truly close, would LIV be signing young talent to multi-year guarantees while also getting rejected by top prospects? According to anonymous sources, merger talks have stalled over team ownership, formats, and contracts. Detry and Smiley signing suggests LIV expects to operate independently for the foreseeable future. But that's not all. These signings could also be leverage, a way to tell the PGA Tour, we can still take your talent whenever we want. And Bhatia's rejection becomes leverage the other way, showing LIV can't just buy everyone. The truth is probably in the middle, with both sides playing chicken, while players gamble on incomplete information. From a pure golf perspective, both Detry and Smiley bring real game, which raises the question, why wouldn't Bhatia think he could thrive there too? Detry's approach play is elite, and the 54-hole format might help him avoid the Sunday fade narrative that's followed him. Smiley's game is still developing, but his Australian PGA win showed he can handle pressure, draining key putts late with a home crowd watching. So this isn't a gimmick signing, the kid can play, and that's why this move matters. His game is similarly impressive when he's healthy and confident. His Barracuda win proved he can close, and he's flashed brilliance in bigger events. The reason his rejection stings for LIV is that he's the ideal target: American, young, talented, and not yet set financially through endorsements. If LIV can't land players like Bhatia, it raises questions about their ability to build a sustainable pipeline of young American stars. And adding Detry and Smiley only makes that imbalance more obvious. The financial model is the bigger shift here, and Bhatia's decision shows not everyone is comfortable with it. Traditional golf is meritocracy. You earn what you win. LIV pays up front, removing risk, but critics say it can reduce hunger. It gets crazier when you realize Smiley could finish last repeatedly and still out-earn most PGA Tour grinders. Bhatia seems to view that as a problem, not a perk, preferring performance-based earnings over guaranteed salary. That mindset is rare. Roster-wise, LIV can now claim even more global representation, which helps the World Tour branding. Detry adds European credibility, and Smiley connects to a strong Australian market. But here's the problem. They still lack the breakthrough young American star to anchor the next decade, and Bhatia turning them down suggests that Hole might be tough tougher to fill than expected. The big unanswered question is whether these signings translate into better golf or just more expensive mediocrity. LIV's format gets criticized for lacking 72-hole tension and cut-line drama. Detry and Smiley don't change the structure, but they could raise the competitive level. Some players claim the team aspect adds pressure because your performance impacts teammates' money. But listen to this. Whether that's true pressure or just marketing spin is exactly what we're about to find out. And Bhatia apparently wasn't convinced enough to test it himself. From the PGA Tour's perspective, losing Detry hurts more than losing Smiley. Detry came through their system and still decided the grass was greener. That's an indictment of a system that forces players to constantly prove themselves or lose everything. But that's not all. Keeping Bhatia helps soften the blow, because it signals the traditional pathway still holds value for top young Americans. Smiley might be the bigger long-term threat, though, because it shows LIV can grab talent before the PGA Tour ecosystem ever gets its hooks in. If top amateurs and young pros start skipping the development ladder entirely for guaranteed LIV money, the pipeline collapses. And this is where it gets scary. The PGA Tour survives on the next generation, grinding up, building fan bases, and becoming stars. Smiley bypassing that system is a warning sign. Bhatia staying is the counterexample that the traditional route can still win, at least for some. So what happens next? LIV says more roster additions are coming through January and February, and insiders claim they're targeting players under 30 with high upside who haven't fully broken through yet. The strategy is clear: build a roster that can compete for another decade as older stars transition out. But here's the catch. None of this works if LIV can't grow viewership, improve distribution, and convince casual fans the product is worth watching, despite format differences. Meanwhile, the PGA Tour is reportedly doubling down on retention, using Bhatia as a template for why staying can pay off. They'll sell major access, endorsements, and prestige. The fact Bhatia turned down guaranteed millions suggests that pitch still resonates with a certain segment of players, especially young Americans. And that's a big deal. The broader implications are impossible to ignore. We may be watching golf splinter into two permanent circuits. Detry and Smiley accelerate the split, but Bhatia proves it isn't universal. But listen to this. Players now treat LIV like a normal employer option, not a moral crisis, which signals the sport is adapting to this new reality whether fans like it or not. Detry and Smiley framed their moves as business decisions based on lifestyle and security, and Bhatia framed his as career goals and legacy. And that's the real headline. The outrage phase is fading, and the decision-making phase is here. Golf is now a marketplace, and players are choosing sides like free agents. Here's my question for you. Do these signings prove LIV is here to stay? Or does Akshay Bhatia's rejection expose a weakness that will stop LIV from ever truly competing for top young American talent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're still on the fence about LIV's future, hit that subscribe button, because this story is nowhere close to finished. And trust me, the 2026 season is going to reveal whether LIV is building something sustainable or just buying time with expensive signings and high-profile rejections.